Good evening, and welcome to the forum featuring candidates for the Port of Bellingham Commission and the Bellingham City Council. I'm Jill Bernstein. I'm one of the co-presidents for the League of Women Voters for Bellingham, Whatcom County. I'm going to ask you to do two things. First of all, please turn off your cell phones. And second of all, please stand with and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This voter forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Bellingham and Whatcom County and the City of Bellingham. The city has provided the facilities, and the forum is being televised on BTV 10. The broadcast will be repeated on BTV 10 and on the city's website and on low-powered radio stations KMRE and KAVZ. The Bellingham Herald is our media partner. We thank the City of Bellingham and the Bellingham Herald for their generous support. This forum is the property of the League of Women Voters of Bellingham, Whatcom County, and the City of Bellingham, and may not be used in any manner without specific written permission from both parties. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization founded in 1920 with over 800 affiliates across the country. Membership in the League is open to men and women of all ages. The League encourages informed and active participation in government and works to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. It is our pleasure to present today's forum to help you to become more knowledgeable about the issues and candidates that will appear on your ballot November 5. We welcome men and women to join us and welcome your participation in League voter information activities such as these forums. If you are not currently a member, I invite you to pick up membership information at the table outside of this room, or simply go to our website and click on the Join Us button. Now, for this evening, members of the League of Women Voters Forum Committee have written a few questions which the candidates have not seen. These questions will be asked of the candidates, but we are eager to ask as many of your questions on as many different issues as possible in the time available. If you have questions for the candidates, please write them on the index cards that you were provided and pass your cards to an usher. Let's identify the location of the ushers. Can you point? They're raising their hands for us. Now, would you raise your hands if you need another card, and the ushers will help you to get what you need. Please write or print questions legibly on the cards with one question per card. Note on the card which race or set of candidates you are directing that question to. Questions will then be screened for legibility, clarity, and duplication by members of the League seated at this table. They include Donna Packer, John Turnbaugh, and Dan White. A last word: no applause or other comments while candidates are speaking. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the Bellingham Port Commission Candidate Forum, Jane Freudenberger. Jane?
Thank you, Jill. First up tonight are two races for Port Commissioner. The Port District is responsible for the maintenance and operation of port facilities within their jurisdiction, including the airport and harbor facilities in Bellingham and Blaine. The three-member commission sets the general policies of our port district and hires the director, who with the staff implements these policies. The commission approves all spending via the budget which they adopt, and this includes operations, capital spending, and public maintenance and improvements. The term is 4 years. The salary varies according to the number of meetings attended. The average salary in 2012 was $17,795. Now I would like to welcome to the podium the candidates for Port Commissioner, District 1. Renata Kowalczyk and Dan Robbins. Before we start, I'd like to explain a little bit about our forum rules. We'll start with each candidate presenting a 2-minute statement. When the candidates arrived tonight, they rolled the dice, and the high roller chose whether to go first with their opening statement or last with their closing statement. After the opening statement, candidates will answer questions in rotation with 1 minute to answer each question. After the first question, I will alternate respondents. John Wall will be tracking your time. Jeanette Cochran will flash a yellow sign when there are 15 seconds left to finish. A red sign signals stop talking. If you continue, a bell will ring, for whom the bell tolls. That means we're not kidding. Stop talking now. So we had the roll of the die, and Mr. Robbins won the toss, so he elected to go second. So we're going to start with an opening statement by Ms. Kowalczyk.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you everyone for attending the League of Women Voters Forum, and thank you for those watching on television. My name is Renata Kowalczyk, and I am seeking to be your next Port of Bellingham Commissioner out of District 1. As an economic development authority, the Port role is to provide opportunities for businesses to grow and thrive. So in turn, those enterprises will provide much needed jobs in the county. I strongly support working waterfront, our marine trades. As part of that, support fishing industry, which both employ a wide range of Whatcom County residents, but also create 2.5 jobs for every fishing job. We have opportunities on port-owned properties to facilitate value-added production and processing that could boost our farming industry. And with new technologies, we can bring new type of manufacturing to our community. And Port's top priority should be to conduct the waterfront cleanup to the highest level. We are building a new waterfront for future generations in mind, and we have to do this right the first time. Our airport has changed in the last 10 years and is no longer a small transportation hub. This growth is necessary for our business community and facilitates economic development. However, Port Commissioners as elected officials also have an additional obligation, and that's to our taxpayers and citizens who live in our community and whose properties values have declined and quality of life has declined as a result of increased job traffic. As the airport grows, we need to actively look for ways to minimize the impact of that growth. Finally, transparency and accountability are essential as the Port acts as a steward of our publicly owned assets. The Port can increase transparency by moving meetings to the evening, as well as having them being televised and available on the internet so everyone can be part of the process. This election, you can get to choose between business as usual at the Port or thoughtful stewardship combined with fresh perspective. I got the red card.
And now Mr. Robbins.
Well, good evening, and thank you for being involved in the political process. I'm Dan Robbins, and I'm running for Port Commissioner in the 1st District. I'm a lifelong resident with deep roots in this community. I'm married to Kathy Robbins, who's been a school teacher in the Bellingham School District for 30+ years. We have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. I'm a graduate of Western Washington University with a degree in industrial technology, and I served 6 years in the U.S. Army. I have owned or been president of 7 successful businesses and served on 9 boards. I have volunteered for the past 10 years for SCORE. The acronym stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. We're counselors to America's small business. I'll bring a wealth of successful business experience and job creation to the Port Commission. My basic reason for running for Port Commissioner is very simple: jobs. There's no question which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Living wage jobs will create all the amenities that we all desire. Playing a leadership role in helping develop our waterfront is a challenge that I look forward to. I'll bring a balanced approach and common sense to the Port Commission. Being part owner and former board member and vice president of a large oyster company and tree farm gives me lots of experience and expertise in sustainable farming and environmental issues. No one wants a cleaner ocean or a canal than an oyster grower. The GP site has sat empty as a brownfield for the past 7 years. It's time for a change. I want our waterfront to be a place that we can all be proud of and our families can enjoy. I look forward to your questions and comments on the Port of Bellingham. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Robbins, I'll start with you with the first question. You just mentioned Georgia Pacific property. What are your priorities in deciding the various elements of waterfront development of the Georgia Pacific property? Please be specific about how you would rank the relative importance of providing employment, public recreation, water-related enterprises, and residential development.
Well, first of all, I worked at Georgia Pacific when I was in college, and that piece of property is absolutely prime. And the first thing we need to do is get the jobs back that we lost. We lost 1,200 jobs, so jobs are my #1 priority. Once we find a developer that's going to come in and be on our port, we then will need to, after that, build the trails and the parks around it. But the job creation in the industry has to be #1 priority. I'm not as excited about public housing down there as a lot of people, but it's certainly a compromise I would embrace. And I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Yes.
So the #1 priority should be first to do the unrestricted level of cleanup. So then we can facilitate any kind of presence there from jobs as well as people being present at the park and enjoying the waterfront. I'd like to see industries there that could use the access to the waterfront, the businesses could use access to the waterfront, but I also would like to see a meaningful access for the public. We as a public have been cut off from the waterfront from a really, really long time. So from a perspective of I personally was on that site 3 times already, and I can tell you that the difference in perception and vision of what's possible, it's so much different when you're at that site and you can actually see and be able to participate in it. And I'm very much in support of Granary project. I think it has an opportunity to be the starting project where you can actually get some activity there and get people excited to be at the waterfront.
All right. And this question will go to you first. What do you see as the future of commercial fishing out of Squalicum and Blaine harbors? What priority would you give to maintaining it?
Thank you for that question. I've been happily and proudly endorsed by Commercial Fishermen Association because I believe that their economic contribution to our county is quite sizable and it needs to be supported and protected. We have some major infrastructure work that we need to do both at Squalicum as well as Blaine, from sawtooth fixing to making sure that we have moving lifts there can lift larger boats to do more work. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, for every fisherman job, there are 2.5 jobs that are created in this county. And all these men and women, and when they come back from fishing from the season from Southeast, they come to this county, they spend money in this county, generating a ripple effect of economic development.
And Dan.
Well, for many years, fishing was one of the prime jobs in this community. And unfortunately, it's not what it used to be, but we still need to protect it. We need to embrace it as much as we possibly can. We need to give them the infrastructure so that they can have a good place to do a lot of their work down there. We need the marine trades that can take care of them. Phil Reese has endorsed me, who has Seaview North down there. He's got a wonderful facility. We're cleaning that up. He's tearing a building down, building some new ones. And I believe in supporting our fishing industry as much as any other industry we have in our wonderful community.
All right. Mr. Robbins, one of the goals of the port is economic development. It appears some recent waterfront development has resulted in transferring businesses from downtown that don't really require waterfront access and have not achieved a net gain in new economic activity. How do you keep that from happening in future development?
Well, you know, that's a good question. I would rather see marine-related businesses down there. Obviously, it is a beautiful piece of property, and it's probably the most expensive property that a business could locate on. There are businesses that are down there that aren't marine-related. And one of them is TD Curran, the new computer company that moved down there. And they fought and threatened to sue the port if they didn't let them go down there. So, you know, you have to balance that. I certainly don't want to take business from downtown Bellingham. So it should be the highest rental property down there. If it's not for marine trades, it should be the highest in Bellingham.
I'm a resident of downtown and very much concerned and making sure that when we talk about a waterfront, we think of waterfront as a district that it's connected with downtown and what synergies we could be creating between two districts. So thank you for that question, because that actually, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that Port has an opportunity to be a real leader in economic development, and that means to have a strategy around what kind of industries are we going to have that? And the most typical way to do it, the easiest way to do it, is to look what industries, what businesses, marine trades and fishing and others are already there that are marine related, and do what is often called an economic development clustering, meaning start looking at what other businesses can be added to that portfolio that benefit from being with the proximity of already existing businesses.
Do you think the marina is the best use for the ASB? And I'm told that this is the aerated, oh, I don't know the next word.
Stabilization basin.
Stabilization basin, which is most of us know it as the GP Lagoon. Do you think a marina is the best use for that? Why or why not? And that goes to you first.
Sure. In my experience in Lives in Corporate America, we have never done such a sizable investment, especially when it comes to when we're talking about this community dollars, without doing a very thorough cost-benefit analysis. So if I think the question to this is, I've heard on my campaign trail at least 4 different proposed uses for the ASB. One is the recreational marina, the second one is commercial marina. The third one is to use it actually to fill it up with the dredged toxins. And the fourth one is it's the creation of the water treatment sewage plant. I propose that before we ask the public to invest millions of dollars at the current rate, that could be about 65, that we do a thorough cost-benefit analysis and we compare all uses against one another to really know that we investing your money wisely.
Robbins?
7 years ago, when the port purchased the Georgia Pacific property, they analyzed what that would best be used for, and they came up with a marina. And I agree, there are other uses for it. I wouldn't dump toxins in there and cap it, because it would be so expensive to ever build that again. I mean, it's a natural marina with all the infrastructure around it. So, but I would keep an open mind. It'll be a while before that does become a marina, if it does, and I'd keep an open mind to look at it as a water treatment plant. But right now, if I had to make the decision today, it would be a marina.
Right, and this question goes to you. The port has not assessed a 1% tax revenue that they could have. That money is nearly $3 million and is banked and can be assessed by the Commission at any time if they desire without a vote of the citizens. For what reasons would you decide to use that assessment?
Never. Never. That money is banked because every year the port can automatically charge a 1% a tax without a vote of the people. We haven't done it, and we don't need to. That money is banked, and at any time The Port Commission could just say, we want that money for something and tax you, and you have no choice. It doesn't go as a vote before the people. So I would never see us touching that. I can't foresee any reason to go after that money. So I would make a pledge right now that I would not touch that money.
I agree that there is another reason why I think it's really important for the public to know. It's also the fact that the financial, that money also contributes to the financial health of the port. And financial health of the port, it's measured by bond rating, and that bond rating allows us to go out and borrow for capital projects. So we want to stay in a very good, healthy financial bond rating, so we'll be able to borrow cheaply if we want to build more of infrastructure for economic development.
Now, regardless of the decision, and this will go to you, we just rotate here, the decision on whether to construct the Gateway Pacific Terminal, rail traffic is projected to increase. How do you think these increases are likely to affect existing and future neighborhoods, businesses, and recreation areas? What are your proposals for mitigating any negative effects? How would you fund them?
So it would be really interesting to see what the results of the EIS come back, because that element of economic impact of train traffic has been included in the EIS analysis. So I'm sure many folks who live around railroad tracks are looking for that information. From the port's perspective, what's important to think about is that potentially increased train traffic could have a negative impact on ports' value, the properties of our value of our properties. I'm sorry, and two, it might have a negative impact on commerce, the ability to get in and out of the waterfront properties of businesses, as well as access for the public. In terms of mitigation, I know there are some plans, and I know the city's looking for it, but I'd like to actually come back, see the results of the EIS analysis.
Yes, I'm going to wait to see the environmental impact statement before I make a decision on anything out there, but I will say I am for industrial development at that location. Whether it's coal or something else. I'm for industrial development. What I'm not for is our waterfront being blocked off by trains. The millions and millions of dollars we're spending for and against coal, we could build overpasses and underpasses in that area. And you know, whether the coal port comes or not, and it could be something other than a coal port, there will be trains, and we need to do everything we can to make sure our waterfront is not blocked off.
In that truth is both on the liberal side and on the conservative side, depending on your viewpoint. Please tell us an example of a time you learned from the other side. You get to go first.
Well, you know, in our oyster business, sustainability is when the environment and the economy are in balance. And as an oyster grower, when you break a hose on a barge, the first thing you have to do is call the environmental folks to have them come out and fine you before you clean it up. The frustration in that as an oyster grower to not just clean it up and then call the authorities. The truth of it is you need to look at both sides, and it needs to be a balance. And in my life, I've seen extremes that I really don't like, and I really truly feel I'll bring that balance to the Port Commission.
It's a fascinating question, because when I launched my campaign, one of the things that I had announced to my team and my supporters is that I want to use this campaign as a way of building bridges and making connections in our community. And as a result, I have endorsements from Washington conservation voters, as well as a labor council union, which tend to be sometimes not in agreement on the same issues. I also have an endorsement from business owners with sizable means and people with no means. But I can share an anecdote that was very telling of the beginning of my campaign. There was a gentleman that came up to me and handed me a $100 check, and he said, "I am so proud that you're running, and by the way, I get my news from Fox News." And I shook his hand, and as I looked at his eyes, I said, "And how is that going to stop us from getting the port to do something for us as a community?" And he said it wouldn't. And I said, exactly.
Well, following up on that, how will you get diverse partnerships to work together? That's for you first.
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
How do you get diverse partnerships to work together?
Great. I have extensive experience in this. I actually ran, in my career for 11 years in financial services, I ran multi-stakeholder, multi-organizational projects. And how I went about bringing people together was finding what matters to them, finding what is that they care about in that project, that we can actually build it on the common ground. So instead of focusing what oftentimes is 20% on each side that it's really not connecting us, that we divide it on, focus on one or two key issues that if we really rally around those issues, we'll create a strong partnership. And I've done that also in my business.
You really need to have an open mind when you start any discussion. And you have to look at the other person's point of view. You have to repeat the question or the statement they made so you're sure to understand it. You know, we have an oyster business and a tree farm on Hood Canal that's owned by 45 first or second cousins. And let me tell you, you want to talk about diversity, when we're in the tree farming business and one board member gives his check to the Sierra Club and the other one wants to buy more timberland, that's a lot of conflict. But we always are able to come out of there and continue to go forward. We're now in a 5th generation. It's run by all relatives, and it works. You just have to have an open mind.
So I think we have time for one more question, and we're going to change the focus a little. As there seems to be no citizen consensus on the optimal size of the airport, how would you propose the Commission balance the competing interests of airport growth and quality of life on the affected neighborhoods? And you're first.
You know, I like the growth in our airport. My wife and I fly down to the Mariner games, and it's nice to be in Bellingham, and you're down there, but it's going to grow. It will grow. The airport, it's convenient, but all airports grow, all communities grow. We need to manage that growth. We need to be conscious of the people that are concerned with the noise. We need to try to encourage quieter planes. We need to mitigate anything we can, but the airport will grow. It's not going to move, and I would love to see a east-west and flights to Alaska, as well as Hawaii, California, and Nevada.
First, I believe that Port can acknowledge responsibility to all of taxpayers. So when there's growth, there's impact, and I believe that Port has a responsibility to find the ways to mitigate it. Two, I've seen many different ways to go about it, and I've actually started conversation with Port of Seattle to understand how they've mitigated their situation when they expanded to a third runway. Some of the ideas that are possible, it's creating more of time blocks when planes could not fly. For example, the Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., or in Virginia, to be exact, it's located in a very densely populated area, and there is a window in the morning and a window in the evening when the flights can come in and not past that. There are other ways that we could be in conversations with airlines. The challenge, of course, is that this is highly FAA-regulated type of entity, so we clearly have to work with them. But I think the openness and the willingness to find solutions, it's the first place to start.
Right, and it's up to you to do your first closing statement.
Oh, sure.
You have
Thank you.
1 minute.
Okay. So when I was 23, I left the oppressive economic and political system of communist Poland. I came to America with 20 bucks in my pocket and speaking 3 sentences in English. But I worked hard and I eventually obtained a degree in economics, which was followed by career in financial services in New York and executive MBA from Columbia University. My jobs allowed me to thrive in New Country. And that is why I'm so passionate about creating good family wage jobs here in Whatcom County. That means really listening to the needs of our business community and our residents, and positioning the port as a leader in supporting and attracting the kind of companies that create family wage jobs in line with our community values. During my corporate work now as a consultant for small businesses, I specialize in creating strong partnerships, helping businesses work smarter, save money, and be more transparent. Please vote for me in November so together we can put the port to work for you. Thank you.
Robbins.
Thank you. I'm Dan Robbins, and I would be honored to serve as your Port Commissioner for the next 4 years. As you've heard, I will be the commissioner with the experience and longevity in this wonderful community. I've been endorsed by all 6 mayors of the small cities in Whatcom County. I've also been endorsed by the Longshoremen's Union, the Board of Realtors, the Associated General Contractors of Washington, along with community leaders from both sides of the aisle, such as Brian Griffin, Pete Kremen, Senator Erickson, Representative Vise, and Overstreet. You can read more about me and see my many endorsers by going to my website, Vote Dan Robbins for Port Commissioner. And my grandchildren have waited a long time for me to say this. You can friend me on Facebook at votedanrobbins.com. Thank you for being involved in the political process and allowing me to speak tonight.
I want to thank you both for being here tonight, and I want to thank you both for running for office. Let's give them a hand. And I would like to remind the audience that if you live in Whatcom County, this race will be on your ballot. Our next 2 candidates are for Port District 2, Ken Bell and Mike McCauley. And I'd like to welcome you to the podium as soon as we get your signs up here. I'm sure you're old hands with the red and yellow cards, so I won't have to repeat that for you. And we're going to begin. Mr. McCauley won the toss and he elected to go last. So Mr. Bell will give his 2-minute opening statement first.
Hi, my name is Ken Bell. I am running for Port Commissioner, and I have yet to win a coin toss. And I just also want to say that you're all missing the World Series. If you know the score, do not tell me. I'm running for a very simple reason. I have an office in the Bellwether building, and in December last year, I'm sitting in my office, and you're going to get a little feel for my personality and the way I think, because I think we've got 4 years on the Port Commission, and it's probably better that you get a feel for the way I think than anything else at this point. But I'm sitting in that office, and the port spends $4 million on an office building, and I look right out at the GP site, and I'm thinking to myself, what? There's $4.1 million that went into a real estate investment that was 85% occupied, and I don't think that is the priority of the port. Real estate investment, 85%, if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it is a duck. That was a speculative move. So I'm looking at this and thinking what I would do with $4.1 million, and I look at that thing that's out there called GP, and I'm thinking to myself, there's a better use for those dollars. So that really is the reason that I decided, that was when the kernel was planted in my brain. And it dawned on me that we really need to move towards a different metric. I mean, as I've learned, that the port really has a metric that is based on return on investment, which is how well do we do. And I'm not a big fan of that model for the port. I think our metric should be, how many jobs did we create this week? How many opportunities did we create for somebody else? When you're working on an ROI model, you're trying to raise money to keep the beast alive, which is the port. When in fact, the metric should be, what are we doing to create jobs? I have a lot more than that red card will allow me to do.
Mr. McCauley.
Hello, I am Mike McCauley. It's been a huge honor for me to serve the people of this county for the last 4 years as your port commissioner. Now, I've only got 2 minutes, so I'm going to take all the fluff out of this conversation tonight. Every year you hear about jobs. Every candidate will talk about jobs. Here's my jobs plan. I'm going to start at the shipping terminal. I think most of you in this room have seen the Arctic Challenger when it was under construction. Over 600 jobs were created on my watch by that project. $280 million infusion into our local economy. What I see as the future of the shipping terminal is a logistics base building exactly those sorts of things like the Arctic Challenger. I call them the janitors of the North because they'll be going to the Arctic, so when there's a problem, they'll be there to clean it up and prevent environmental catastrophe. I think that's the future of our shipping terminal. Downtown waterfront. 4 years ago, said I would like to see a clean tech research and development center on our waterfront. We have about 30 acres we can do that in. Those are our future economy jobs. I've been trying to get that built into our master plan. It's not quite there yet, but I'm going to continue fighting for that because I think your kids need to be able to learn here and stay here, and losing our children because they want to be an engineer or take a job that's related to the future of our economy, to lose them is a shame. I've got an idea. It's built on an incubator model. Other ports do this in our state. I'd like to see the board mill building on our waterfront turned into a 3D printing incubator, and I want Bellingham to be a center in the world for 3D printing. Marine trades. The majority of marine trades businesses on our waterfront support me. They are helping fund my campaign. Just about every commercial fisherman in this county is supporting me in my re-election. I think I understand marine trades, and I want to continue fighting hard for those businesses on our waterfront. Like I said, it's been a real honor serving the people of this county, and that's my jobs plan.
We have several questions about cleaning up the Georgia Pacific site. And one of them is, would the Georgia Pacific cleanup be cheaper and more thorough if we use the ASB, there's that term again that you all know and we know as the lagoon, for polluted earth rather than capping with its long-term liabilities? You're first.
It would be cheaper. There was a group that was created here in Bellingham, the Bellingham Bay Foundation, and they presented a plan to the ports and to the city to use the ASB as fill. And I've contacted some of those people over the last few years, and that idea still has relevance. Now, I support two things with the ASB. If it's ever to become a marina, and I have a the decision-making authority on that, I will only support a commercial marina, not a pleasure boat marina. And especially because that marina would be adjacent to our marine trades land. A pleasure boat marina would put pressure on the marine trades land, and I don't want to lose our marine trades. The second thing would be to fill that in. And think about this for a second. If we do fill it in, the environmental groups that I've talked to here locally have said they're okay with that. And here's the cool part. That volume has value. We sell the volume and we get a free park or something on top of it at the end.
Yeah.
The ASB, by the way, I'm going to go back and describe what my family is and all that stuff because I really did run out of time. The ASB is a tremendous asset. And I can't stand to see a $150 million water treatment plant go unused because I'm in the waste business. I'm in the cleanup business. So for me, looking at that ASB area and just relegating it to marina as a final decision is not part of my priorities. That ASB has probably got so many uses as long as the infrastructure has not been taken away. As far as the cleanup plan goes, I don't know where it fits in. What I do know is that we are well on our way towards getting final passage and getting finished with the first stages of the initial stages of our cleanup, and we need to continue to do that with the agreements we've made with the regulators that are in place.
Describe your leadership style, Mr. Bell.
Oh, wow. See, I don't idle well. So my leadership style is I'm a big picture thinker. And I love creativity, and I love that thought process, and I love to engage others. My leadership style is one where we sit and we paint a vision of what should be, and then we go about making that happen and removing the obstacles that are in the way. My job as a company is to go to places where nobody else goes And if you think that's easy, let me tell you, it's not. We have been to the furthest reaches of the Yukon Territory to do cleanups in a place where you don't have road access. We've been to Antarctica, where I do the cleanup at the South Pole. To get people in line with that is a hard thing. I've also taken companies like Weyerhaeuser was losing money with their recycling operations in a number of different locations. We had to take what was a Weyerhaeuser operation, turn it into something profitable with the cooperation of the staff.
I didn't understand my leadership style until I joined the Marine Corps. And you learn about yourself when you're in the military. In 1991, I was sent over to the Gulf to fight our first Gulf War, and it was there that I learned about my leadership style. And I would say it's been said a lot by a lot of people over the years, but I like to lead by example. Most of the jobs I've had throughout my life, I've worked alone, and I work by myself now. And I do want to lead by example. I do that in my own daily job. And lately I've been able to work with a crew, and I don't have a problem with the crew, but I expect them to watch me and keep up with what I'm doing.
This question goes to you, Mr. McCauley. What improvements or development projects do you envision for port-owned properties in Blaine, Sumas, and Fairhaven?
Okay, Fairhaven. I have been struggling, as have the port, with our cruise terminal. It's a bit of a cul-de-sac at the end there, and there's not much going on. And we're about to invest $7 million in the pier at the Fairhaven shipyard, and that's going to help them stay in business. Over the last several years, we've actually lowered their rents to help them stay in business because they were very close to leaving our community for financial reasons. Continued investment and paying attention to those businesses, specifically in Fairhaven. I propose a 300-ton travel lift be built in Fairhaven. We take the old 30-ton travel lift out of the Patton Creek estuary, and we build a new facility further to the north that's more environmentally friendly and can support boat builders like All American Marine, who now they struggle to find access through the shipyard down to the water. In Blaine, we're starting a plan right now to reconfigure the industrial areas at the end of the road, so to speak, and we're still trying to figure out what to do, but we're looking at something like a $20 million project up there, environmental cleanups and infrastructure support.
Mr. Bell.
The first thing I would do is in Blaine is I would put them on the same list that I put Bellingham as far as cleanup goes. The one thing that I have learned is that our generation left a lot of stuff for the sake of industry in the past, and we've got a responsibility to take care of it. We wanted very clean white toilet paper, so we put GP's stuff in our water. Blaine's got some of the same issues. So the first thing we can do for Blaine to help them out is give them a clean environment from which they can attract. One thing I know about companies, you don't want to go on a site that's got contamination. You're a PRP, a potentially responsible party, if you're on that site. So the best thing we can do for Blaine is to get them a clean waterfront. Fairhaven, I'm on this page. I look at this thing again, I'm a global thinker. I take a look at what this port has got, and there's a lot of restructuring that needs to go on. I'm not proud of what I see on that port today, and I'm not going to be happy until I am. When you take a look at what's happening on the south, when you take a look at what's happening in the middle, and you take a look at what's happening at the north end, everything needs a coat of paint. Don't you ring that bell. Everything needs an upgrade.
But you get the next question, too. As there seems to be no citizen consensus, and this you've heard before, on the optimal size of the airport, how would you propose the Commission balance the competing interests of airport growth and quality of life on the affected neighborhoods? Yes.
Here's one of those places where I think a little differently than Mr. McCauley. It pains me a lot to see $70 million worth of investment in an airport and have our major client there bullied to serve a purpose. We spent a lot of money on that airport. It serves a lot of people. You ask anybody down on the marina where they're going to get their client base from, they fly people in to see who we are. That airport is the gateway to the world. I would love to see flights east to Boston, east to Chicago, north to Alaska. My feeling on the airport is we put $70 million into that airport. We need to make life easy for the customers who serve us there. That means we make life easy for Allegiant. That means that we make life easy for the people that we spent $70 million to accommodate.
Mr.
So
McCauley.
we spent $70 million on my watch. I voted in favor of that airport project. It's $38 million in the terminal project, and it will serve our community probably for the next 15 years without further addition. So there I do agree with Mr. Bell, but where I disagree with Mr. Bell is that the port has tenants, and every airline is a tenant in my eyes. They're not customers, they're tenants. We serve customers, we serve tenants. There's a distinction in my mind. It's too hard to explain in a minute, so I'm just going to go on. I don't think, and I'm glad this question was asked because this does show a huge distinction. I don't think I've ever bullied any airline, but I think that when we have a tenant that's creating a problem in a neighborhood, it's my responsibility to have a conversation with that tenant to see what we can do to mitigate for that. One of the things that I proposed, should I be reelected, is that we create an off-airport advisory group so we can find solutions to the off-airport impacts that I voted and helped create.
Right, this is from the audience, and they would like to know if you could ask a question of your opponent, what would you ask them? And you go first, Mr. McCauley.
So I have been waiting all year for a good opportunity to ask this question of Mr. Bell. So Mr. Bell, you've probably heard me say this at other forums, and so I did the math recently anticipating this question. I spend over 400 hours a year on port business, specifically port business. I take every other Tuesday off from morning to night, and I pack every one of those days with as many meetings as possible. Now, we know, because we looked at your record on the Planning Commission over the last 2 years, that you've missed roughly 40% of your meetings. Are you prepared, should you be elected, to put in 400 hours a year as a port commissioner?
Here we go. This is an easy one for me. I was elected to the Planning Commission, and in my application, I told the County Council that I was up for a job renewal in Antarctica, and that if I got that job, I would be deployed to the South Pole for a period of time. Kind of a cheap shot. So when you look at that, they knew in advance that I was going to be gone. They were told it is a voluntary position. Everybody on the council voted for me. I got 7-0 with that knowledge in their heads. I missed all of those meetings when I was on an airplane or in Antarctica to service a huge contract that I have with the National Science Foundation. That I am not unapologetic for, because everybody in the system knew. Everybody voted for me knowing that was coming. My company is now on cruise control. We've now got everything in place. I've got managers in place. And like I said, I don't idle well, Mr. McCauley. So I need something to do. If I'm not doing this, I'll be doing something else.
Right, now you get to ask Mr. McCauley a question.
We've been waiting all year to have these gloves off you guys, so this is kind of fun.
Boston or St. Louis? No.
Like birds.
Mr. McCauley, the port got to the final phase of its cleanup. And during that final phase of its cleanup operation, the motion was made to go forward. You voted no because you wanted to see a lift put in there, knowing full well that there are two different kinds of permits. The permit is the nationwide 38, which is an environmental only cleanup, which allows us to clean everything up under one set of rules with certain agencies. But to do a construction would require a 404 permit, which requires a whole different set of bodies. You were sitting there for 4 years, agreeing to every step of the cleanup. Then you say no, because you want to add a lift, which would require us to trash the old permit, bring in a new permit, which would involve new parties, including the tribe, which would have set us back years and millions of dollars. Why?
So the question I asked you was, would you spend 400 hours in service to the port? And I didn't hear an answer to that.
Yes.
So I did vote.
Yes.
I did vote against that. That plan that Mr. Bell's talking about is the Whatcom Waterway Phase 1 cleanup. It predates my time on the port, and I have not had an opportunity to vote in favor or against that plan. The first opportunity I got, I voted no. Why? Because it doesn't go deep enough, it doesn't dredge far enough upstream, it takes out infrastructure without replacement, takes almost 1 acre of land off of our waterfront permanently. And here's the kicker. You ready for this? The cleanup depth will be a -8. That doesn't mean anything to most people, okay? It's pretty much what it is right now. 3 weeks ago, a barge sat down there on the bottom for half a day at -8. How is a cleanup where we're supposed to be dredging deeper for commerce, and we're not doing that at cleanup? It's just a cap, and I've heard you say you're against caps, and that's mostly what that waterway cleanup is.
All right, moving on. The Port of Bellingham has been criticized for a lack of transparency. What specific actions would you propose to make the governing process of the port more accessible and transparent to the citizenry? Would you support enlarging the commission, and why? And you go first.
So in 2009, I was asked if I would support enlarging the commission. I said if the people wanted it, I would bring it to the Port Commission for a vote. I did that last year, and it went to the people for a vote. What else would I do? I proposed that the Port of Bellingham's commission use Robert's Rules of Order. That resolution was not voted favorably. We do not use Robert's Rules of Order. I, for the last 3 years, have asked our commission every January to move our meetings to the evening so it's convenient for people to show up. Every time I'm shot down because nobody ever showed up. Well, guess who comes to our 3 o'clock meetings? Nobody. And the last 2 years, I've supported spending $22,000. $22,000 every year to televise, just like we're televising tonight. I get shot down 2 years in a row. We spent $10,000 on art for the Squalicum Boathouse, but we won't spend $22,000 so that people can see what their commissioners are doing.
Bill.
I believe one of the most important things you could do is go to a 5-member commission. One of the things that's very hard for me to stomach is the fact that you have 3 people in one election. You can swap 2 of them out and have control of the commission. I think 5 members would bring a more broad array of ideas, which I think are deeply needed. I think a 5-member commission would allow you to talk to somebody on the commission, exchange ideas. Guys like you and I may actually get along.
We disagree on that one, you guys.
And I do believe that those 2 people ought to be able to have a conversation. I happen to be an out loud thinker, so it benefits me greatly to have a conversation with somebody. So I think a 5-member commission is key. I think televising meetings is terrific. I love the 3 o'clock meetings because I get to spend time with my wife, but I would be willing to do an evening meeting if it would make it more accessible.
Questions for Mr. Bell. What do you see as the future of commercial fishing out of Squalicum and Blaine harbors, and what priority would you give to maintaining that fisheries?
Oh, I think it'd be a healthy mix of everything that we do. You can't have a waterfront without having a vital fishing industry. I give the fishing industry the highest props for surviving through some of the toughest times that we've had. I'm absolutely in favor of it, but I think it's a healthy mix. I think you have to have fishing. The port is for water-related activities. This is really what is at the core of my being. We have a waterfront. It should be for waterfront activities. That includes fishing, that includes boating, that includes anything that requires water. Anything else can be done on the other side of Rotor, on the other side of Cornwall. But when we have water access like that, I think it's important to have a healthy, vibrant fishing community, and I think we ought to have that as a part of the mix with everything else that's water related.
So I think my endorsement by the Commercial Fishing Association, representing over 200 small businesses, which we call fishermen in the generic term, I think that endorsement speaks volumes about my commitment to the fishing industry in this community, in our region. When there was a discussion at the port to change our moorage rates to a competitive rate so we were more on balance with other Puget Sound commercial rates, I did a lot of research and I had stacks of documents. But one thing that I found most telling, I have a geography degree, a master's degree in geography, and I think about the Pacific Rim and our location geographically on the Pacific Rim. And think about our location on the west coast of the United States while I'm saying what I'm about to say. The center of the world's economy has shifted to the Pacific Rim, and we're pretty much right in the middle of that. The commercial fishing industry on the west coast of the United States is a $14 billion industry, and we are right in the middle of that. ignoring our commercial fishing industry is ignoring a vital part of our economy.
Okay, I think this is going to be the last question. There's been a lot of talk about living wage jobs down at the port, and there's some groups that are pushing for some kind of statement that says that that would be all you would support. How do you feel about that? And if you were for these living wage jobs, how would you guarantee that we get them? Mr. McCauley, sorry.
So there was actually another question I was going to ask, and I would love to ask this from anybody who's running for office. What's a living wage job for Bellingham? Anybody? It's a little over $17 an hour. Do I support living wage jobs? Absolutely. How do I support them as a port commissioner? What did I say when I started? A research and development tech park with engineers in there. Those are living wage jobs. The question that's being asked is would I support a community benefits agreement? And I do not know enough about community benefits agreements and how a government would manage a community benefits agreement. But my job in the commission isn't to pick winners and losers up front. My job is to listen and find the winners whenever we can. So if the community wants to talk about that, I'm absolutely willing to talk about that.
Mr. Bell.
It's also the reason I'm here. The income disparity in this country, no one can dispute, is severe. We have a lack of people working in middle income jobs in this county, in this country, because we've done away with them. We have the endorsement of the Longshoremen's Union because they used to have 60 working members on this port. Today they have 0. Did you hear that? 0. We've got to do something about that. I am completely in favor of bringing in the kind of work that would bridge that gap between the upper incomes and the middle class workers. I work on ports. I know what they make. It is the kind of industry that will revitalize the middle class, not only in this county, but I think it's a good start for this region. When you put a guy on a forklift making 40 bucks an hour unloading a ship, that's a huge economic benefit. That's what I want to see here. As far as an overlay for the district for minimum wage, we would scare away a lot of industries if we were to put that in place.
Continue, because it's time for your 1-minute statement. Closing statement.
You only get a minute?
Only a minute.
Well, my name is Ken Bell. I'm here because I want to do a couple of things, and I think stability is the most important thing we can do for this port. We have had 4 years and 5 years and 4 different executive directors for this port. We have had an incredible amount of turmoil at this port. I don't think anybody will look at the port and say this has been a stable environment. My background lends me to this. I've done turnarounds. I understand what it's like to work with people. Who would have thought that garbage in Antarctica would have been shut down because we were non-essential? That kind of hit me personally. I understand how to work with governments. I understand how to work with people. I understand what it takes. When it comes to things like environmental cleanups, I get it because it's at the core of my being. I do environmental cleanups for a lot of people in a lot of remote places. I want stability. I want to make sure that we get this thing cleaned up the best we can so we can attract the best opportunities that this place has to offer.
Well, I think our community knows that it's been the good old boy cronyism that I was elected to defeat that has caused the problems at our port, and you will see a change in January. The port has been suggested by my opponent that it's a business, and the port is not a business, and I don't think we should run it like a business. You run a business for profit. I don't think we should run the port for profit and take your taxes at the same time. It's either one or the other. To me, the port is a nonprofit. We support business. We take tax dollars and we build infrastructure for business. Now, the port that I inherited 4 years ago wasn't doing that. It's still not doing that. Put me back in office and I will have a new commitment, a renewed commitment to keep working on ensuring that the port is focused on supporting business, not competing with business. It's been a great honor again to serve the people of this county. I want to say thank you to everybody who's come out tonight and the folks that are watching, and I hope that you'll return Mike McCauley to your Port Commission.
Thank you.
You know, we've been waiting. We want to go for an hour, so.
Thank you very much for running for office, and we've given them a hand now, and I'd like to remind the audience once again that this race will be on all Whatcom County ballots. Now I get the great pleasure to introduce League Board Member Tanya Baumgart, who will moderate the second half of our forum. Tanya.
Thank you, Jane, and good evening, everyone. I get the pleasure of welcoming you to the last section of our forum series. This will be for Bellingham City Council. City Council members are charged with responsibilities set forth by state law and the city charter. Council members have legislative and policy-making power within the city and represent citizens through legislation and policy direction. They anticipate and target issues that affect the community, set community direction and goals for the future, provide a policy framework for municipal operations and services, and serve on standing committees. City Council members serve part-time and are paid $22,716 per year. We will be starting with Ward 4. I'd like to welcome candidates Clayton Petrie and Pinky Vargas to the podium, please. Thank you for being here tonight. Our ground rules are going to be the same for this section. Candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening statements, followed by 1-minute responses to questions and 1-minute final statements. Our timers will signal you with a yellow flag. Hello, yellow flag timer. To indicate 15 seconds left, and a red flag means stop. If you hear a bell, that means finito. We're getting the hook. So the winner of the dice roll was Mr. Petrie, and he chose to do the last closing, so we will begin with you, Ms. Vargas.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Pinky Vargas, and I'm running for Bellingham City Council, Ward 4. It is a privilege to be here. The League of Women Voters is always my favorite forum, and it's also exciting because it's our last forum. I believe in protecting Lake Whatcom watershed. I want to ensure smart progress on our waterfront development, and I want to support our local businesses. These are the 3 main things that I'm advocating for to be on City Council. I feel like it's a privilege to live in Bellingham. Here we protect the environment, we care about family, community, and quality of life. And these are things I want to stand for and ensure that it stays that way here. I'm an energy efficiency manager currently at Puget Sound Energy, and I work with our city, with our county. I work with a lot of agencies like Sustainable Connections and Whatcom Business Alliance, and I also support a lot of our local businesses on saving energy and conservation and how to save dollars on their business. So I want to bring those relationships to City Council. I have a background in project management, and I'm known as a connector and a collaborator and someone who gets things done on budget and on time. And I think those are skills we could use at City Council. I also wanted to take an opportunity, because this is our last forum, to talk a little bit about what the experience has been like. I've never gone for any elected official position before, and I have to say that this has been the most challenging and probably the biggest growth opportunity I've ever had. And I want to say that the people of Bellingham have been tremendous. We have an incredible community, and we are very supportive of people taking this step up. And if anyone's ever thought about being an elected official, I want to encourage you to do so, especially the young ladies out there. I'm passionate about being Bellingham steward. Oh, I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Petrie?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Clayton Petrie. I'm running for Bellingham City Council. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to tell you about my campaign and to ask for all of your vote. I'm currently endorsed by a wide variety of groups and persons, including multiple labor unions, current and past officials of the local Green Party, GOP, Whatcom Democrats, Libertarians, past and present city and county council members, and many others, including the Cascadia Weekly, who said about me, Clayton Petrie would add dimension and scope to the council. And we don't agree with Clayton on several of the issues he's raised in this campaign, but he's argued them well, and that's kind of our point. The Cascadia is right. I'm an independent thinker. I've traveled the world on business, but I've kept my local perspective. Bellingham needs to come first for the City Council. Lake Whatcom will always be on my priority list. I will focus my attention on restoration projects to help reduce our pollution into the lake and work cooperatively to make sound decisions to best protect and preserve our drinking water source now and in the future. Bellingham has neglected to maintain levels of service for its public safety departments. We're asking public safety officials to do more and more with less and less. As recent events have shown, that puts our public safety officials at risk. I will work to reverse that trend because it must be a priority. I understand the importance of balancing neighborhood character with the need to infill. Density is a community decision, and Bellingham recently declared an affordable housing emergency under a special state law. I believe Bellingham should work to preserve our existing housing stock and increase availability of affordable housing for everybody. We need to stop the flow of good jobs out of Bellingham. Half of our designated jobs land is not even available right now. I will work to retain our current jobs and put an open for business sign on our long designated jobs producing lands. If elected, I would be the only self-employed Bellingham business owner on the council, and I think that brings an important perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll have questions from the league as well as the audience, and you'll have 1 minute response time. The first question is, what do you consider to be the most challenging issues facing the city as its population grows, and what factors are most important to you in resolving them? We'll start with you, Mr. Petrie.
Well, I think one of the most challenging issues is the budget. The council struggled with creating a balanced budget that addresses all of our needs over the for a long time now. I think they've dipped into reserves for 7 years in a row or something like that. And we're still not doing some of our basic necessities well. Recently they were talking about the roads, and they only repave arterials. They don't spend any money on our neighborhood roads. And if you go through the lettered streets, you'll see exactly what the effects of that are. So we really need to prioritize these basic city functions, and I think that's been very challenging for the City Council in the past, and it will continue to be.
Ms. Vargas?
I do agree that our budget is a challenge here, but I think the biggest thing facing us right now is growth. And we have to look at our future and what we're going to look at as a city. How are we going to sustain our economy? How are we going to have enough jobs down here? How are we going to have enough placed parking spaces downtown? How are we going to keep people in Bellingham and also accommodate all the people that are moving here and our students who actually want to stay and have a job close to home and stay here? So I really think that our biggest challenges are how are we going to deal with our growth so we don't sprawl and we don't use our agricultural lands, but we build wisely here in the city.
Thank you. The next question. What should the city's role be in addressing the issue of homelessness and other social issues? We'll start with you, Ms. Vargas.
We have an extraordinary city. We take care of people here very well, and I'm very proud of that here in Bellingham. I think it is of utmost importance for us to take care of all of our citizens, those that can help themselves and those that we need to support. I realize that a lot of our budgets have been cut over the years, as well as with our seniors. Everyone is looking for dollars right now, and we're cutting in places that are really hurting people. And I think it's important for us to make sure that we are taking care of human services and needs, and we are looking out for all of our cities. And I can tell you as a city council member, this will be a very high priority for me.
Thank you. Mr. Petrie?
The city has been actually doing, I think, a really great job at helping out our homeless citizens. There's a whole plan on how to reduce homelessness and hopefully eliminate it someday. At one of the recent forums, we were talking about how you can there's nobody that can go, you can't go without food, you can't go without a meal in Bellingham because everybody has worked collaboratively together to provide that as a service, especially for the homeless people that often can't take care of themselves. The city of Bellingham also, the citizens voted to have the Bellingham Home Fund, and a portion of that is dedicated funding as opposed to just general funding to help with some of those programs, and I will look forward to participating in those in the future.
Thank you. The next question. If there's one thing you could change about the current version of the Waterfront District Plan, what would it be? And that question will start with Mr. Petrie, please.
If there's one thing that I could change about the waterfront plan, it would probably be the high level of what I call downtown and old town zoning. What it does is it takes working waterfront lands, industrially zoned lands, and it converts it into something else. And as we've seen with some of the port development in the past, that often sucks businesses away from downtown. And I mean, you know, building on the waterfront's really attractive. It might be expensive, but you know, it's really attractive, and that's something we really have to be careful of. I don't see a problem with having a connected downtown and waterfront with some of that going on, but I think there's a little too much of it, and that's the one thing I would probably, that is definitely the one thing I would like to change.
Thank you. Ms. Vargas?
One thing I want to ensure of is that our downtown and our waterfront are connected. I think that that's really important, that people feel like they can flow, whether they come in from the water or come in from downtown, that both of those sustain each other. We need to make sure that we have living wage jobs down at the waterfront, because we've lost a lot of jobs down there. And I realize that this is something that comes up in discussion over and over and over again, but it's not specifically laid out in the plan, and I would like to see it laid out very specifically in regards to how we are going to support the waterfront, and we are using our tax dollars wisely.
Thank you. Next question, where do you see yourself in providing leadership in seeking solutions to protect Lake Whatcom where the city has jurisdiction? And we'll start with Ms. Vargas, please.
You know, the city has done a really great job in providing a lot of information on what the phosphorus levels are in our lake and how this is affecting our watershed, how it's affecting our water treatment plant. What I'd like to bring is, I'm an energy efficiency outreach person, so it's my job to outreach to the community and bring messages that sometimes can be very complicated and simplify them and get people to connect to what their behaviors are. So if I can add something in regards to how to protect our lake, it is bringing things out into community, talking to people about how their behaviors affect their actions, and giving people examples. And if we show people how to do things simply, like we did with recycling and composting, we can show people how to protect our lake. And I want to bring those communication and collaboration skills to the city.
Thank you. Mr. Petrie, please.
Well, I think that the citizens of Bellingham, especially the ones that live in the watershed, are very aware of how their actions may affect the lake water quality. And I think Bellingham's done a great job of educating them. And what I'd like to focus on is some of the streams that have fecal coliform issues and other things like that, and work on the restoration projects that are planned. There's some of them planned, and there's other ones that we can plan for, and use some of our funding that we collect with our water bills to do those jobs. And that's what I'm talking about when I say I want to take care of our pollution. But it's not just that. I realize you asked about our jurisdiction, but it's really important and key that Bellingham work collaboratively with both the Water District and Whatcom County to address issues in other parts of the lake as well.
Thank you. All right. Should the city speed up the process to build a new library? And we'll start with Ms. Vargas, please.
I know that this is a dream the city's had for a long time. We've looked at the plans, we've found locations, and a new library is very exciting. And knowledge is power. And the library is a place where a lot of people go that have no other resources. Would I like to see us move forward on the library? Yes. Do I want to take money out of places that we're direly needing them, like increasing our police force and looking at human services and needs? I don't want to pull that money forth there. So I think that we may have to wait until our economy improves, where we have the right proper budget allocation to do the library. And as soon as that money is there and we have the funds to be able to move it forward, I would definitely support the new library.
Thank you. Mr. Petrie, please.
The library is a fantastic place for our community to meet up. We have meeting rooms there, and it's in a pretty old building, which Bellingham has had some problems maintaining some of its building. That's one of the core things that the city hasn't really kept up on as much as they should have. Something we should look at is the proposals that we've had in the past from some developers where they would give us a free library in the Cordata area. There's an option for that, and that might be something the community is interested in doing. And the other thing we should do is take a look at the current library and see if we can just build an addition to what we have now. I don't think we necessarily have to have a whole gigantic, big new library somewhere else in town. Maybe we can just improve on some of the things that we have now.
Thank you. How would you improve coordination between the port and the city regarding waterfront development? We'll start with Mr. Petrie.
Well, one of the first things we need to do is have joint meetings. And I actually went and testified to the city council during the hearing about that. And at the next port meeting, they announced that the city and the port were going to hold a joint meeting. I think it would be extremely helpful if we had both the city official or the city council and the port commission in the same room at the same time, talking about the same issues and hammering out some of the differences they may or may not have. I think if we all got in the room together and kind of talked about these things, we'd probably find solutions instead of just kind of lobbing rocks at each other and saying, so there.
Thank you. Ms. Vargas?
I agree with Clayton very much so. I think the problem with this process is we've been doing a lot of it in silos. You write this report, I write that report, and then we pass it back and forth. And that's not effective. We all know that we actually have to be together. We have to discuss the points together, be clear about what our meaning is, and work together to the solution. It's just like breaking bread in a family, is that we don't always agree, but in order to get resolution and move forward, we need to work together in the same location.
Thank you. All right. If you could ask your opponent a question, what would that question be? And we will start with Ms. Vargas.
Clayton, I want to say that it's been a very respectful and civil race with you. Thank you for that. There is something that I do wonder about, though. You do say that you're an independent and you're an environmentalist, and yet, and you support our housing fund. However, I do know that you did not support the reconveyance, and that you also wrote documents against the housing fund. So I don't always know where you stand. And again, you say you're an independent, and yet you are supported and endorsed by the Republican Party. So sometimes I question who you really are and where you're coming from.
Absolutely, that's a good question. And I think I covered the who supports me thing in the beginning. I have a wide variety of endorsements from all sides of the aisle, and I think that speaks for itself. As far as the reconveyance goes, you hear a lot of people talk about listen to what the science is, and we have we had a proposal where the Department of Health and the Washington State Department of Ecology both weighed in and said that the reconveyance will not improve or help water quality at all. Okay, so that's really important to me because it's the scientists, people that know a lot more about this issue than me saying this. And the other thing is we're actually going to have a little bit less recreation in the area than we have had in the past. I don't know if you know this, but the DNR allows all kinds of recreation. The proposal that the County Parks Department has brought forward is actually for less types of recreation than we currently enjoyed when the DNR was in control of the land.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Petrie, you have the opportunity to ask Ms. Vargas a question.
Well, you told me you weren't sure if we were going to be able to ask a question. I guess you've talked a lot about water quality, Lake Whatcom, and education. And I see the education side of it as already being done, and that was useful, but I don't think it's something that's going to provide more results. Exactly what kinds of things would you like to see the City Council do to improve lake water quality?
Well, I actually do think that there is still a gap between the information that's out there and people's actions. I do see that. I see it every day. I live in Silver Beach. I live by the lake. I see people throw their trash. I see people use fertilizers that they're not supposed to on their lawn. So I think that there still is an opportunity for us to talk about that. Maybe we can do things as simple as, here's a thing that affects our water quality or that affects our sewer system that people don't even realize is people who throw cigarette butts in the street. These actions still happen. They happen every day. So I think that we cannot say that as a society that we've learned all the lessons and that we are doing all the right things, because we're not. I think that we are exposed to a certain environment. We have a tendency to have people around us who are like-minded, but there are a lot more people that are not like-minded. And in regards to outreach, I'd like to see us put signs on fertilizer that says not appropriate for the lake, or do things in our communities that encourage people to make a difference for our water quality.
Thank you. Your next question. What community organizations, city, and volunteer activities do you participate in? And we'll start with you, Mr. Petrie.
Well, the main thing that I do is, I designed bicycles for a number of years, and that's how I traveled the world and saw all these different places. And so what I mostly do is trail maintenance. I live right at the bottom of Galbraith Mountain by choice, because I like to be able to, I just went for a ride before I came out here to maybe try and relax a little bit. But when there's a tree down, or when a trail gets blown out, or there's just too many leaves in the drainage areas, I have a couple hidden tools up there, and so I'll grab a little shovel or something and I'll fix the trails. So that's what I spend most of my community service time doing.
Thank you. Ms. Vargas?
Okay, I hope I can get them all. I'm active in Sustainable Connections, Whatcom Business Alliance, the Northwest Business Club, Bellingham City Club. I volunteer on the Art and Arts Council. I'm the treasurer on the on the board for the Center of New Media, and I also participate on the Greenways Advisory Council. Let me see, am I missing anything? I'll probably think of it later. Yeah, I'm involved all over the place.
Okay, thank you. This next question is, what do you see as the city's role in fostering a viable, vibrant, and safe downtown? And we're going to start with you, Ms. Vargas.
Well, in order for us to have a safe downtown, right now we have a police department that needs our support. We've had budgets that have cut so dramatically. They do such a fantastic job of taking care of our city that we don't even realize how badly in need we are in support of them. So I would like to definitely see increased support for our police department so they can handle all the things that are happening in our downtown. I know there have been businesses that are asking for our support because we do have lots of people that congregate in our downtown, and we've had some pretty exciting experiences in the last couple of weekends here, and we know the importance of how we have to take care of our community, and we have to support our police department so that they can support our city.
Thank you. Mr. Petrie, please.
Well, our downtown is pretty vibrant, and actually I feel fairly safe there during the day for the most part. One of the problems that we have is our low income in the city of Bellingham. It's about $10,000 less than the rest of Whatcom County. So that means that all of our citizens have much less money to go spend in our downtown. And most of us go there and we support it and we love it, but sometimes, it's a little hard to find parking, right? And my wife actually moved her business out of the central business district adjacent to downtown where there was adequate parking. And I'll tell you what, her customers are a lot more happy, and I think her business has been growing because of that. So I think that one thing we really need to do is work on that parking lot that we've been talking about for, 30 years.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I lost track of where I was at on that. All right, I am concerned about affordable, accessible housing and the lack of both in the area. What can we do about this, and what plans do you have to rectify this situation? We will start with you, Mr. Petrie.
Well, it's not my plan. We have a community plan. It's called the Consolidated Plan, and that's one of the things that can help us achieve more affordability. The other thing we have is a comprehensive plan, and that's the whole city plan. It maps everything out, and we're reaching the end of our first 20-year period, and a lot of the things in that plan haven't been implemented. And that constriction, because of our not implementing, we haven't annexed lands in a timely manner within this 20-year non-moving horizon, has caused a real constriction on our housing supply. And when you reduce that supply, you lose vacancy, affordability. While we're actually behind King County for first-time homeowner affordability now, all kinds of things have happened because we haven't followed our comprehensive plan very well. So I don't think it's going to be something that I come up with, but it's something that I can help the rest of the council implement as well.
Thank you. And Ms. Vargas, please.
We've had some great leadership in regards to how to support housing here in the city. We had our Bellingham Housing Fund last year, and Mayor Linville has now allocated 4 different spots for us to do some new housing developments for low-income housing. You're right, Clayton, it is not just our decision, it is a community decision. One of the things that we struggle with the most here in regards to is development. Where do we put our structures? Where's the right place? And do we put them in we have to put them in the places that make sense for our community, places that are close to public transportation and public services. Those all have to be considered in regards to where we put it and how we're serving our community. We do need to look at our density rate here because we have a lot of land, but not all of it is buildable land. So we have to look at things like going vertical and making sure that we're putting housing that's going up, that serves our community, in the right location.
Thank you. And it looks like it's now time for our closing statements. They're 1 minute each, and we will start with you, Ms. Vargas.
Again, my name is Pinky Vargas, running for Bellingham City Council, Ward 4. I'm grateful to be endorsed by Mayor Kelly Linville, by 5 of our current council members, by our Bellingham Whatcom firefighters, by Whatcom Democrats, Washington Conservation voters, some of our local unions, and Planned Parenthood. I'm a businesswoman, a humanitarian, and an environmentalist, and you will never question where I stand on our community or our environmental issues with the city. I believe we must ensure Bellingham is a place where we can all live, play, and work. And I want to thank you for this opportunity. You can find me at www.votepinkyvargas.com and, of course, on Facebook. And again, thank you for this opportunity. I would be honored to serve our city as a member of City Council. I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Petrie, your closing statement.
Thank you. Again, my name is Clayton Petrie, and I'm asking for your vote for Bellingham City Council tonight. And I just want to reiterate that, I have talked about 4 main things the entire campaign, and that is working on Lake Whatcom cooperatively with the rest of the council. I want to work to not only maintain our reduced level of service for public safety that we have now, but work to increase it somewhat. So that we can bring a good, safe downtown to Bellingham, and so that we don't have to call in the sheriff's deputy to help us when students get out of line or youngsters get out of line. And I also want to talk about how important neighborhood character is to me. All of you have invested in your neighborhood, and we need to infill carefully and protect your neighborhood as you bought it.
Please join me in thanking Clayton Petrie and Pinky Vargas for being here tonight and for running for public office. Our next and final race this evening is for the at-large position, which is a 2-year term. Running for this seat are Bob Burr and Roxanne Murphy. They'll be joining us now at the podium. Thank you for being here this evening. We're going to be starting with your 2-minute opening statements. All those same rules apply. And Ms. Murphy was the winner of the coin toss and has chosen the closing statement, so we will be starting the opening statement with Mr. Burr, please.
Thank you, and good evening. I'm Bob Burr, the underdog in this race, because I believe that money in politics is inherently corrupting, and I will not raise any. If you don't raise money, organizations, even those that you have passionately supported all of your life, won't endorse you. They want to back winners. But everybody loves an underdog. Love me, support me, vote for me. My history is as a corporate executive and an entrepreneur. After heading R&D at Prudential for several years, I retired here in 1995 and ran my own national research business for 13 years. At age 65, I stopped working to become a full-time activist, which I define as being a lobbyist for the people. I've been married for 50 years. 2 issues prompted me to run. First, I'm against coal trains, coal export, and Cherry Point. No candidate was speaking out about it. Somebody needed to, so I stepped up. And now I'm speaking out about oil trains as well. Second, City Council disdain for the voter. Twice in recent times, it has sued to block votes on legally qualified initiatives. It felt the voters were too stupid to make the decision. That shocked me, and thus I run. Some comparisons between Roxanne and me. I've lived here 18 years, Roxanne too. I worked here 13 years, she's never worked here. We agree on most things, but we differ on the intensity of our beliefs. I'm an activist, she a politician.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, your opening statement.
Well, I just want to thank you all so much for being here, and I thank you very much for having me. My name is Roxanne Murphy, and I'm running for Bellingham City Council at large. So the Bellingham Herald has defined me, and I'm grateful for the fact that they define me as a reasonable progressive. The Cascadia Weekly said her presence on the council would be additive and constructive. And I'm so honored that so many people in Bellingham have so simply said that I will be a breath of fresh air if I get elected to the council. I'm an award-winning community relations specialist. I have the strongest background in improving local government. I have the best background in economic development. And I also hold a master's degree in public administration from the Evergreen State College. Go Gooey Ducks. So I have lived in Washington State for 37 years. Yes, that is all of my life. I moved to Bellingham 2 years ago to accept the job of my dreams to work as an assistant administrator for my Nooksack Indian tribe. I recently bought an adorable home in Sunnyland, and I spend my free time taking part in the amazing recreational opportunities that we have here in Bellingham and throughout Whatcom County. I'm really running for office to protect and improve the quality of life in this amazing city. I'll work hard to preserve Lake Whatcom. I'll support our local business community. I want to redevelop our waterfront in downtown, and I want to improve public safety to create safe streets for all of our community members, our education system, and anybody who visits our city. I have thankfully received 21 major organizational endorsements for these commitments. And I worked the hardest in this race by reaching out to thousands of voters to really understand what Bellingham residents want. And my fundraising from an array of organizations shows just how many people think that I'm the right person for this job. Lastly, my commitment to creating effective community outreach will prove to you what I will always be, which is a public servant. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll start our questions, and you'll have 1 minute response time. The first question is, what do you consider to be the most challenging issue facing the city as its population grows, and what factors are most important to you in resolving them? This question goes to you, Ms. Murphy.
Well, I think growth is the #1 thing that we have to plan for. I believe that Bellingham is really going to be a continual community of choice for the way that we take care of our environment. Other cities are simply going to be drying up because they don't show that same amount of care. Therefore, we're going to have to continue to take in a population increase. That means we're going to have to zone our city to create the right kind of residential development and jobs to get those people here and to have people stay here. And so Bellingham will continue to be a community of choice. I also just think we really need to focus on those jobs. That economic development has to create jobs so people can live the best quality of life here.
Thank you, Mr. Burr.
I would agree that growth is the #1 challenge, not only for our city, but for the world. We are straining at our capacity. The city does a lot of planning for growth. It's time that we do more annexation to give us the type of growth that we need without destroying the character of our current neighborhoods.
Thank you. Describe a success you have had in the private sector, and we'll start with you, Mr. Burr.
Okay, I was head of research and development for Prudential. I managed a large staff. I have managed budgets that are bigger than the budget of the city of Bellingham. I have won awards for being the best boss, for having the most diverse staff. At one time, I had a staff of 12 professionals, all of whom were female, and 8 of whom spoke English as a second language. When I retired at the age of 52, I had traveled to 49 states on company business, and I chose Bellingham to retire to and open my business here. And I ran that successfully for 15 years, and since then it's been a story of non-success because I have not met my basic goal now, which is to save the world.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, please.
I'd have to say, I think my best private sector success was working with the private sector in everything that I did, pouring my heart into working for the Economic Development Department for the city of Tacoma. We worked hand in hand with developers, with the realtors, with the community members to turn that community from a downtrodden downtown to a downtown renaissance. I want to create that exact same thing in downtown Bellingham. Downtown Bellingham already has the amazing attributes that Tacoma had to work toward, but now we have an opportunity to attract more businesses, to attract more livability, to create safer streets. This is the background I can bring, and this is what I want to deliver.
Thank you. What factors are the most important in reaching a decision on any land use or zoning issue? Examples are medical marijuana production and sales or private student housing. We'll start with you, Ms. Murphy.
Can you repeat the start of the question?
Certainly. What factors are the most important in reaching a decision on any land use or zoning issue?
So I really think about how we do effective community outreach about zoning and land use, because we need input from our communities. We need the community to tell us what they want about the future development. That's defined by the zoning and the land use. When it relates to medical marijuana, we could have done such a better job of helping the medical marijuana businesses understand the The moratorium on that was not to displace those businesses. It was just a hold so we could understand what Washington State wanted to do with those policies. So to me, it's so much about the partnerships that we have with the different stakeholders relating to zoning and planning. It's considering that in addition to anything that we get from different stakeholder organizations about what they'd like to see and incorporating it together.
Thank you. Mr. Burr?
It depends on what use you're talking about. I think that in one word it would be the citizenry or the community. I don't think on marijuana, for instance, that the zoning should be any more severe than it is on liquor, because it's proven that the substance is of less harm. When it comes to student housing, nobody wants that to be in their backyard, and that's a problem that we have with our neighborhoods now. I think that there's plenty of room on the campus and surrounding it for more student housing, and that's where that should be.
Thank you. Do you support 20-story buildings downtown? Why or why not? This would be for you, Mr. Burr, to start.
Yes, I do support them downtown. If you were to ask me whether I support them on the waterfront where they're proposing them, absolutely not. I believe that for us to accommodate the growth that we're trying to talk about, we need vertical growth, and downtown is the best place to have that. Old Town is a good place to have that. The waterfront, where it will constrict our views, is not a good place to have that.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy?
I definitely would support that, and my dream would be a residential development that's mixed income with affordable housing and then for sale housing. And then also I really want that kind of tall development downtown because I'm really concerned about neighborhood preservation. So let's develop our downtown so it does not bleed into our neighborhoods that have so much great character.
Thank you. What prevents Bellingham from attracting business now? That would go to you, Ms. Murphy.
I think the problem primarily is a reputation for not having fast permitting. And that is constantly a problem for people that are trying to recreate a business space. And so we need to create reliable permitting for people. I hate to lean back on Tacoma, but in that city, if you have your plan together, you can get your permit in 7 days. I'm not guaranteeing I can do that in the city of Bellingham, but it's something I want to work toward. Reliable permitting and zoning is something that makes your area attractive for that investment, and that's what I'd like to do.
Thank you. Mr. Burr?
As I said, Roxanne and I agree on many, if not most, issues, and this is another that we agree on. I have talked to many small business people, some who have located here, some who have located in the county, and the common denominator is the slowness and red tape that they have to go through to get building permits. And that also has to do not only with businesses, but with residences. The red tape is something else. Talking with people who used to work for the city, who are free to talk about it, they say that the city has many outdated planks that need to be relooked at and cleaned up.
All right then. How would you balance light impact industrial and recreation uses in the waterfront redevelopment area? And that will start with you, Mr. Burr.
Okay, my dream for the waterfront is a working waterfront, and that would have a lot of light industrial that pays living wage jobs. I am one who does not trust the port to say, well, we'll try to bring living wage jobs here. I definitely want a solid community benefits agreement that says, if you want to bring your business here, you are going to have to pay a living wage job and provide adequate health benefits. I think the plan now has sufficient recreation in it. A lot of people always want more recreation. Bellingham is one of the greatest cities the greatest city I've ever lived in as far as current parks are concerned. I'm not sure that we even need the park that's going to be built on the waste dump.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy?
I just think this is an excellent opportunity to bring together so many different interests in what we want out of that waterfront. We need the industrial jobs so desperately to keep people here and maintain that quality of life. But at the same time, let's create that recreation space. They can live hand in hand. We've seen that neighborhoods like this redevelop throughout our country. So to me, it's just about proper placement. It's about thoughtfulness on the environmental remediation. But I think that those two needs can be equitably met. We just have to do the right zoning and planning.
Thank you. Bellingham has a large college student population. Many live in rental units near Western. Do you believe the city should license landlords? Should the city be more aggressive in enforcing noise and liquor laws near campus? And we will start with Ms. Murphy, please.
My strong background in how you deal with this issue is you create stronger nuisance code enforcement. So my idea is that if there are problems on the outside of an apartment complex, there are likely problems on the inside relating to fire hazards and other concerns about human welfare. So to me, I would like this to help the city understand what a strong nuisance code could do. I just think it would be really hard to license residential owners. I don't understand how you could guarantee that people would do the license. How many people would need to live in an apartment in order to do the license? It's something I definitely want to explore, but I would really hope to help the city understand what a nuisance code could do.
Here we have a difference. I am in favor not necessarily of licensing, but registration of all rental units with the city. And with that registration, which would be mandatory, would come inspections, just like elevators are inspected. And I think we could inspect our housing stock on a 3-year cycle. I'm less concerned about the noise that students make. It's one of the things that I must put up with for living in a college town, and the benefits of living in a college town outweigh the occasional revelry on the part of young students.
Thank you. The mayor is committed to balancing the city's budget in 2014. How high is this on your priority list? What would you consider to be, or what, if anything, would you consider would be more important? Start with Mr. Burr, please.
We've had reserves that we've tapped into for 4 years now. I'm a believer, having worked in business and having worked in organizations with people who worked for government, that there's a lot of waste in business, and that there's a lot of waste, even more so, in government. So I would like to look closely at where we can cut the waste and stop doing unnecessary things in government, so that we can do the necessary things like better provide for our mentally ill people who we now house in the county jail.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy?
I think that creating an established and a responsible budget is the #1 top priority, because it's the #1 responsibility for a city council member. That directly affects you. And to me, it's something where I would love to use my creativity like I have in the past to figure out how we can get different kinds of funding, different kinds of partnership with the private industry, ways that we can help our budget in ways that might not be happening now. Because I think that's the biggest service that we can offer to our citizens, is guaranteeing that your city is operating with a balanced budget, because that will assure that we have the right kind of economic development, community development, our parks, our libraries. We need to continue to fund all of these amazing things for that quality of life.
Thank you. In view of increasing rail traffic through Bellingham, it's been proposed that the city establish quiet zones to control noise from train whistles and improve public safety. What do you think of this proposal, and do you have any suggestions to finance and implement quiet zones? We will start with Ms. Murphy.
I've spent most of my time in Bellingham living in the lettered streets, so boy, would I have appreciated a quiet zone as the rail cars used to shake my old place. But I'm really excited that Mayor Linville is looking at ways that we can create different quiet zones throughout the city of Bellingham, because this affects so many of our neighborhoods that live near that rail line. And those rail cars are going to continue to go through our community. So to me, it's ways that, again, we can figure out different partnerships to fund such quiet zones. They're quite expensive, but they're so worth it, especially because the quiet zones, you know, the horns are such a disruption, and people say you can get used to it. I don't really think you can. So quiet zones are something that I really want to explore.
Thank you.
Quiet zones are not a big priority for me. I think that the one that's currently being talked about is mighty expensive for the relief that it will bring. I think there's a lot other issues regarding the trains that are worse than the noise, and that's the disruption of emergency traffic, etc. One of the things I want to explore, because a lot of people know I'm sort of an expert on railroad tracks, is that is to work with the Congress to change the laws that were made in the 1800s to allow the railroads to pay more than 5% of the cost of overpasses and underpasses, which would alleviate the need for horns and quiet zones.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy? Oh, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked again. All right, here's one for you. If you could ask your opponent a question, what would that question be? And we're going to start with Mr. Burr.
Roxanne and I were asked this question at this is the last forum of the year. We were asked this at the first forum of the year. And I very much liked Roxanne's answer, or the question. And she said that basically she had too much respect for the other people on the stage to ask a loaded question. So I guess my simple question is, will you be glad when this campaign is over?
Softball.
I think this is another thing that we definitely share, Mr. Burr. No, I mean, definitely. This has been an amazing campaign for both he and I to really help you understand where we come from. And so I'm going to show that respect again for everything that he stands for. I won't be asking a question. I think that this is a way that we mistreat one another, and I don't take part in that.
All right, we'll just skip right then to the next question. How do you think two current City Council development concepts creating urban villages and the infill toolkit have worked out in practice? What changes or modifications would you suggest? And we will start with Ms. Murphy, please.
I think some of the ideas in the infill toolkit are valuable, but the plain reality is I don't think they've been implemented anywhere. If it is something that should intend to be implemented, let's do outreach to the developers and to people who may be interested in benefiting from it. But I really want to take a critical, harsh assessment of that toolkit to figure out if it's even something that's viable for people or if it's something that shouldn't even be continued. I think we can achieve so much through incentive policies, through the way that we zone, and through the outreach and the partnerships that we have with different development communities to achieve some of those very goals.
I was Prudential's chief long-term planner at one time, and in the process, I developed a very strong bias against planning and in favor of action, of execution. The plans are good, as Roxanne says, they have not been implemented. I don't think the solution is more and better plans. One of the reasons that they haven't been implemented is, quite frankly, that there's a lot of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, feeling on the part of the neighborhoods. You know, they want the less than desirable development to be in somebody else's neighborhood. So I'm not a fan of continuing the planning process. I think we need to do more annexation, as I said before.
Thank you. Well, we have now reached the time for the 1-minute closing statements. And Mr. Burr, we will start with you.
Okay, this is where the love fest stops. I am not the hand-picked choice of powerful local women whose noble but narrow goal is to seat more women on the city council. I have no conflicts of interest. I am not a machine candidate. I do, however, have endorsements across the political spectrum. I've been endorsed by the Whatcom County Green Party, the 40th Legislative District Democrats, and by Alan Brown, our primary opponent, who was in turn endorsed by the Republican and the Libertarian parties. Roxanne has special interest endorsements and money. I want change, not dollars. Vote for change. Vote for the underdog. Vote Bob Burr.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, your closing statement.
Well, I can't help but feel like I'm back in the affirmative action days where I'm jumping up and down saying, yes, I am a woman, yes, I am Native American, but I'm also really qualified. But I just really want to thank Bellingham from the bottom of my heart. Your votes helped me earn 51% of the vote in the primary election that we had in this race, and that was such an honor. And I really hope that I have been able to prove throughout these months of campaigning that I'm worthy of your vote in November. I've been endorsed by the Whatcom Democrats, the Washington Conservation Voters, the Police Union, the Fire Union, the County Realtors, Mayor Kelly Linville, 6 Bellingham City Council members, the Teamsters, the Central Labor Council, and the list goes on and on. I ask you to please visit my website, www.electroxanne.com, and again, I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking Bob Burr and Roxanne Murphy for being here tonight and for running for public office. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Bellingham and Whatcom County, I would like to extend a big thank you to the City of Bellingham, our co-sponsor, and to our media partner, the Bellingham Herald. Repeats of this and all of our forums can be viewed on BTV 10, which is Comcast Channel 10. They can be watched online via the City of Bellingham's website at cob.org. You can find it on the Services tab under Education. The County Council Forum will be repeated at 8 a.m. Saturdays and 10 a.m. Thursdays on BTV 10 until Election Day. The Forum on Bellingham School Board candidates, the School Bond, and Statewide Initiative 522 will air at 9 a.m. Tuesdays and 2 p.m. Fridays until Election Day as well. Thank you to Joe Collins, our Voter Service Chair, and to the Forum Committee who have worked so hard. And thank you all for being such an attentive audience and for asking such great questions tonight. Your vote counts. So remember to cast it on November 5th and encourage your family, friends, and neighbors to vote also. Good night.